Okay, so welcome everyone to the webinar that we've put on today, the 7 Steps to Becoming a LinkedIn All-Star. So I'm going to go through a few of the housekeeping rules to start with. You're going to be muted throughout the webinar, guys. So if for whatever reason you become unmuted, if you could just mute yourselves again, just in case there's any noise in the background, kids or pets or anything like that. There's about 50 odd people on this session today, so yeah, it'll just help things move along a bit faster. If you have any questions throughout the chat, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can click on the button at the bottom, the little speech bubble, and type in your question, and then we'll answer them at the end. When we share our screen to present, you can make it bigger or smaller. There's a little slider on the right-hand side if you're looking at this on a laptop or a desktop, and you can make it bigger or smaller if you want to be able to see more of the screen. And then finally, we're recording the webinar for use. We're going to put it onto our website as a blog. So if you don't want your face to be seen, you can click on the stop video button, which is on the top bottom left if you're looking at it on a desktop or a laptop. So yeah, okay, next slide. So I'm going to start with giving you a statistic from LinkedIn themselves. So 80% of business-to-business leads come from LinkedIn. So this information has come from the link in the statistic. Has come from the link that you see there. So if you want to read more about it, this is obviously research that LinkedIn have done themselves. So this obviously emphasizes the importance of the kind of things we're going to be talking through today. So if you go to the next slide for us, please, Danny. Another recent statistic that we've seen, LinkedIn engagement is up 76% for work from home content. So basically in the last few weeks, since we've been in lockdown, any content associated with working from home or coronavirus or COVID-19, engagement has been huge. So again, now is a really good time to be implementing the things that we're going to be talking about in today's webinar, because everyone's on social media. Most people can't go anywhere else. So social media usage is really high. So for a business to business arena, you know, this is the kind of stuff that is really getting good engagement at the moment. It's emotive content. So yeah, if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to quickly go through the key things that we're going to be talking through today. So obviously we're talking about the 7 stages to become a LinkedIn All-Star. An All-Star is actually a classification given by LinkedIn. If you're an All-Star, it means that you've got all the bits and pieces in place, and that's what gives your account more exposure on LinkedIn. So number one, we're going to be talking about your profile, the basics of creating an All-Star profile. Number two, your connections and the importance of building them. Number three, endorsements and why you should manage them. Number four is recommendations and why and how to ask for them. Number five is making sure your profile is set to public and how to manage those privacy settings. Number six is your dashboard, what it's for and how to use it. And then number seven is your general activity and the importance of being active. And then we've got finally a bonus tip as well on how to optimize your company page. Okay, next slide. In terms of a little bit of information about Danni. So Danni's going to be presenting today. She has 16 years of experience in recruitment, recruiting, selling and marketing through LinkedIn. Off the back of working in a recruitment agency as a marketing manager prior to joining Expand around 6 or 7 months ago, she did a lot of work in the LinkedIn arena, and she's actually been trained by the LinkedIn sales team that came in and gave training all the ins and outs. So she really knows the stuff on this, and the kind of thing she looks after at Expand is everything to do with social media. Next slide, please, Danny. And then also just a little bit about Expand before I hand it over to Danny. So we are based in Saltaire in West Yorkshire, and we are a full service digital agency. So that means that we do marketing strategy, digital strategy, branding, web design and development, getting traffic to your website through getting found on Google, search engine optimization, pay-per-click, social media, PR, email, anything that involves generating, building inquiries for your business. That's what we're all about. It's all about return on investment. And we've been going for 13 years. I set the business up in 2007. So yeah, we've got a fair bit of experience, and some of the more notable clients and the memorable, the kind of brand names that you'll recognise that we've worked with are Lindt Chocolate. We built a HR intranet system for them. The Tetley, we've done a lot of lead generation for the Tetley Brewery based in Leeds. Argra Restaurants, we built their website. That's a chain of restaurants in the Yorkshire region. They've got about 15 restaurants dotted throughout the area. And then Her Majesty's Prison Service. But then the majority of our client base is very much the SME sector. So yeah, they're some of the more recognisable names. And in answer to some of the most common questions that we get asked, no, we didn't get free chocolate, no, we don't get free beer, and no, we don't get free curry, and no, our job wasn't to recruit any prisoners into the prison. It was an internal branding project. So that should hopefully put that to bed for the questions at the end. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, Danni, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Jag, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you'll all take something away from today's session. So, alarmingly, only 51% of users actually have complete profiles. And this stat comes from LinkedIn themselves. LinkedIn has 675 million members worldwide, and it's known as the largest professional network. But yet, only 51% actually do have everything they need on a profile. So we're going to look at the first step in terms of All-Star and what it takes to become one. So Jag mentioned it briefly. It is the how you actually are known in terms of a profile strength on your actual LinkedIn profile. So there are sections on your profile in the top right-hand side. LinkedIn actually have a step-by-step guide which you can follow to complete all the sections. However, obviously, if you are stuck for time, I would highly recommend that you look at these 4 key areas. So the introduction, the intro section, which is your name, job title, company, the location, which some people do fall down on. This actually means the location of your company or your business, not where you live. So if that's different, just make sure that you do have that set correctly. Your contact information, and of course, your profile picture and headline. Now, your profile picture and your headline are the main 2 things that we need to stress that you have to get right. They are the first 2 things that anybody will see before clicking into your profile. So they're highly important. And there's a stat there for you that explains a profile with a picture is 11 times more likely to be viewed, which makes sense really, because obviously you want to see who you are going in to look at. In terms of a profile picture, there are some key things that you do need to do when you are choosing a profile picture. You need to make sure that it looks like you, which sounds ridiculous, but I've come across people where they've had a picture from a couple of years ago and it doesn't look like the person who you met at the networking event a week ago. So you need to think about how people will recognise that photograph. Make sure it's professional. Make sure there's only you in the photograph, and you want to aim for like head and shoulders. Look at the camera as well, because this displays confidence. In terms of headline, your headline needs to be punchy, needs to be catchy, and it needs to make them want to view you. What's going to make them click in to actually read your profile? You need to think about keywords that you will result for. You need to also include skills and any results. What can you do for them? Why should they pick you? The about section. So this is your summary. So your summary is basically your story. People don't always write enough here, and you really need to make use of the space. There is a space for at least 3 paragraphs there. So start strong, use it as your career story, don't be afraid to inject some of your personality. After all, people do buy from people. So this is the opportunity for you to just show a bit of who you are. Make sure that you also showcase your skills, and you can do this in terms of a list at the bottom if that's how you want to do it. Background. So basically, when we're talking about background, we're talking about your jobs, your education history, and any volunteer experience, which LinkedIn does like. When you list your jobs, you need to make sure that you are listing the relevant information for each of those roles as well. So by this, I mean what your responsibilities were, any achievements that you've had whilst there. And also, this is a really good opportunity to sell the company that you're currently at. So use the space. Members with up-to-date positions are discovered up to 18 times more in searches. So it really is important that you do list these positions and keep them up to date. What I would say though, is that it isn't like a CV in the sense of that you need every single job on there. It doesn't have to match date to date. So if you've got a job on there that's irrelevant to the career that you're in now, don't feel you need to list it. For example, if you worked at TradeX at the weekends when you were at university, you don't need to put that on unless, of course, it's relevant to a retail career. Depends on you. Accomplishments. So this part is basically your evidence section. This is where you can add some credibility to your profile. It's the skills section and it's the project section, and there's elements there where you can use the section to add some credibility to what you've already said above. We'll go into skills a little bit more detail later, but just to sum all of that up, users with complete profiles are 40 times more likely to receive opportunities, and this means job opportunities, sales opportunities, connections, just general opportunities. So it really is worthwhile doing all of this. Networking. So I came across this on the internet, and I really like it actually. I think it speaks 1,000 truths. Networking isn't how many people you know, it's how many people know you. And I think that is so true. If we apply it to, our general life now, how many people that we say we know, but how many of them do we actually trust or do we actually listen to? So I think you need to think about that and apply it to your connections. So I'll explain what I mean. So LinkedIn, as I've already mentioned, it does have 675 million members worldwide, and that number is growing every second. So obviously you couldn't connect with every single one of them, not even in a lifetime, probably. I don't think you could. But LinkedIn likes to put the figure of 500 on there. Basically, if you have over 500, it'll turn to the little plus. So everybody does see that as a figure to aim for. Now, it's not essential to have 500 plus, but it will help you in terms of the algorithm and how you appear in search results. I've just put there on the slide, basically you will gain more prominence if you are seen to have an influence. So it should make sense really, if you think about the playground analogy of a popular kid having lots of people around them, lots of friends, lots of people wanting to be the friends, and the influence that that popular person had on other children within the playground. LinkedIn kind of works the same way, but be warned, don't just go connecting with anybody, don't accept everybody's connections, because obviously they can do more harm than good. So how you grow your connections, LinkedIn does help with this by giving you suggestions in your My Network section, which can be found at the top of your profile on the right hand side next to your home button. There's like a little picture of two people. If you click on that, it'll give you suggestions. What we would also advise that you do is connect with all the key contacts in the organisations that you work with. So, for example, if you have a business that you're working with, say for example you're working with Nestle, and you want to make sure that you're connecting with every single member who's key in that organisation, because should that one contact you have leave, then at least you've got a foot in the door with some of the other contacts as well. We highly recommend that you join groups. Now, these need to be relevant groups, and we will go into a bit more detail about groups later, but just these will give you an opportunity to meet with other like-minded connections. Connect to people who inspire you. This is more for a content purpose, really, because if the people that inspire you, they're likely to have the same interests, and then obviously the content that they post will be relevant to you too. Look for value. As I've said, don't just connect with everyone. Do look at whether there is an opportunity in the future, and use the search feature. And this is useful for previous companies or schools. You may be able to find some old connections from there and click and connect with them. 500 sounds a lot, but actually if you think about everybody that you know in life, there's probably a lot more than 500 there. Before you realise it, you'll be flying above 500. But yeah, something to focus on. So LinkedIn members who include skills in their profiles receive up to 13 times more profile views. So obviously 13 times more profile views is important, is a lot, and having these is vital, but it's okay to have these skills listed, but you do need to manage them. So what I mean by that is that in LinkedIn you can have up to 50 skills, and you can pick these yourselves. What we recommend, especially if you're starting out, is to pick 25, which are specific skills to what you are looking for in terms of career-wise or business-wise, you know, what you're looking for to connect to. So make sure that those 25 skills are relevant. Get into the habit of reordering them and deleting any that are not relevant to your position. So for example, if you have changed career, there may be some skills on there from your previous career that are not relevant anymore for what you want to be found upon, if that makes sense. Identify the top 3 that you do want to be noticed for. You can select these by going into the section, and you can move them around just by dragging and dropping. Put the top 3 in there. They will then act as keywords for any search results. One thing that people don't do is actually ask people to endorse them. So if you are working on improving yourselves in a particular area, don't be afraid to ask people to actually go on and endorse you in that skill, especially if you've recently moved them around a bit and you need some credibility in those areas. So yeah, don't be afraid to actually go in and ask someone to do it for you. But also don't forget to return the favour as well. Okay, 83% of online respondents in 60 countries say they trust the recommendations of friends and family. That's not surprising, really. How many of us use TripAdvisor, or how many of us will write a recommendation after we've been for a nice meal? We, as a nation, like to share the negatives and the positives. So, you know, it's important that we do have that trust. Now, if you went to a restaurant and you had a nice meal, think about when you'd write that review. You probably wouldn't wait a month before doing it. The same applies when it comes to recommendations on LinkedIn. Now, recommendations are seen as more value by LinkedIn than skills and endorsements. However, they are obviously more difficult to get hold of. Recommendations do act as a source of evidence, and they do add credibility to your profile, the same way that a testimonial does on your website. Think of your profile as a little mini website of your own. Treat it like that. You need to provide evidence as to why that person who's looking at your profile should take it to the next step. Make sure, if you are a business owner, or if you are developing business yourself, make sure that you request a LinkedIn recommendation to your sales funnel and make it a habit to ask for them. Always, I can't stress this enough, take the time to personalize the request. Think about it yourself. If you receive a request to write a recommendation for anyone, and all it says is, hey, write me a recommendation, is it likely you're going to? Just take that little bit of time to explain why you think they should write you one and why you'd like them to write you one. And remember to do it while the iron's hot. So don't leave it for a month, because it's unlikely they'll do it. They're happy now. You've provided them a solution, so ask for it now. Don't be afraid. Okay, we're moving into privacy now. So I saw this on the internet when I was just doing a bit of Googling, and I just had to share it with you because I just think it's so relevant. Getting information from the internet is like taking a drink from a hydrant, obviously American, but I think it's very true. The internet is absolutely full of personal data and information, and LinkedIn is no different. But how do you manage them? So there's two different sections to your privacy on LinkedIn. The first we're going to cover is what we call LinkedIn offline. So it's how you appear outside of LinkedIn. So you can manage these settings by going into your edit public profile and URL, which is up in the right hand corner of your profile page. This will take you through to what you can see here on the screen, and you can use the toggles to decide what you want to show to members off LinkedIn and what you want visible in Google, Bing, those kind of search engine results. It's also important, if you wish to use the View My LinkedIn Profile button in your emails or websites, you do need to make sure that these settings are all on. The other part of your privacy settings is how your details show online on LinkedIn. So for example, on the left hand side there, you can see that the top one is how I would show currently if I'm commenting on something, say for example that Jag has put out there on a post. If I comment, then everyone, regardless of how we're connected or if we're not connected, would see that top part there where it explains my name and my headline. You can obviously change these and they will show as they do on the left hand side underneath there. You can have certain characteristics show, so it will say someone at wherever it is you are, or you can completely turn it off to private mode and nobody can see anything. The only thing I would say about doing that is that yes, nobody can see you, but you can't see them neither. And if you're on LinkedIn to build a business or to build a presence, then that's not really going to help. Okay, so we're going into the dashboard now. So I found this, and I thought it was quite true, really. Your ideal customer or contact is as unique to you as your personal dashboard data. So use the information available as a benchmark for monitoring results and making continuous improvements. The thing with social media and LinkedIn is no different. It's changing all the time. And what I tell you today could change next week. However, what won't change is how you benchmark what you're doing. So you need to make sure that you are taking constant information and analytics on your own content and what's working and what's not. So your dashboard appears, it's only showing to you nobody else can see it, and it appears on your profile about halfway down in the middle-ish. It gives you so many different tools that enable you to understand how what you're working. So you can see there, you can see how many people have viewed your profile. In this example, they've had 303 people view. They've had 2,134 views of any posts that they've done. And they've appeared 131 times in searches. Now, those are really key stats. What you can do is you can click into each one of those on your profile and it'll take you into more detail. Salary Insights is useful if you are looking for another role, because you'll be able to compare what your roles are. Sorry for a bit of interference there.
Yeah, I've just muted someone, that's fine.
No worries. The graph on the bottom is where you can, when you click into who viewed your profile, it gives you some more detail on the trends and how the viewers are working on your profile in the last 90 days. Now, this is useful for you to take a screenshot of that today and then make the changes that we're talking about and see what kind of impact that has had in the next couple of months or weeks, depending on what your strategy is. There's also a little Brucey bonus for you. There is a very useful tool called the Social Selling Index. Now, this actually measures how effective you are at establishing your professional brand, how effective you are at finding the right people, engaging with insights and building relationships. And it's updated daily, so it changes all the time. So it's another measure that's worth keeping an eye on. And we are going to send you the link to it afterwards. So it's very interesting to have a look, and it does work with industries and what you've put as your industry. So it's quite an interesting little tool. Okay, so the biggie. Only 1% of users share content on a weekly basis. That stat was provided by Kinster, who run a lot of different stats. But interestingly, I've also recently completed LinkedIn's training guide as well, and they've also mentioned that content is not something that people are actually actively putting out there. So it's not enough to have the perfect all-star profile if you're just not using it. But how do you use it? It's quite simple, really, I say. But there is stuff that you can do without it taking a lot of your time. We generally say that if you spend an hour a day on LinkedIn, then that should be enough. These are some key things that you could go away and start doing today, and it will make a difference. The big thing about LinkedIn is that they like contributors. They like people to be active on their platform. It's not just about building numbers to them, it's about being active and making their platform worthwhile. To be fair, they just want you to add value, which makes absolute sense, really. So take these things away with you today. When you go onto LinkedIn and you're scrolling through, do not like every single post you come across. Be what LinkedIn call a LinkedIn liker. Apply what we do as when you're reading something, if you're reading a post and it adds value to you, then give it a like. Don't just like everything. Keep your profile up to date. Now, that may sound really silly, but actually it's very easy to not do that. We mentioned earlier about skills and having old dated skills on there that are actually not that relevant to where you're going in your career now. You know, for people who may have had a career change, it may not be relevant to have some of the previous skills on there that were there before. Your career history needs updating all the time. Think of it obviously like a CV. People are looking at it regularly. If things change, then make a change. Make sure to diarise to keep an eye on your profile, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, that's entirely up to you. You know better than me. Share the love. LinkedIn, again, they do like you to be active and to contribute. So make sure that what you're doing is adding value to other people on there too. Give them a comment. You know, if you've read it and you've found that you've learned something from it, then put a little comment on saying, thanks for sharing this. I found it really valuable. Do you mind if I share it? You know, do help each other, because LinkedIn will like that, and then it will see that you are adding value, which is only an added plus. Write articles. So little key fact for you here. LinkedIn love listicles, hence why we've done a seven steps. They absolutely love easy to read and easy to digest content. So writing something that you're confident on, but outlaying it in a simple format like how many steps, will completely push your profile up to the front. Join relevant groups. Now, this one is easy to do, but you do need to be active in them too. It's not a case of just being in them and having them stuck onto your profile so people can see, oh yeah, I'm the member of 7 groups, but I don't actually talk in any of them. Doesn't really work that way. You need to share content in there too. And just be wary of their rules. People in groups do not like to necessarily be sold to. You don't go in a group to be sold to. You go in a group to learn and develop a network. So make sure that that's what you're doing. Show some respect. So if you've read somebody's article or you've read a post that they've done and you've learned something from it, then show them a little respect by going to their profile and giving them an endorsement on whatever the subject content was. Seems simple, but not enough people do it. So just a key stat there at the bottom for you, 20 LinkedIn posts per month can help you reach 60% of your unique audience. 20 is not a lot in a month, really. It's not even one a day. But if you have a think about it, if you're spending an hour a day and you're posting once a day, then that you should definitely be seeing an improvement. Okay, so think about how many of us research a product before we buy. Who goes on Google and searches what they're thinking about? Who goes on TripAdvisor and has a look at the holiday before they book it? Well, 97% of consumers go online to find and research products and services. So that's a lot. So why are we telling you this? Because it leads us on to our little extra that we promised you all in regards to company pages. Because people are online and going online, you need to make sure that your company page on LinkedIn is doing everything that it should be in terms of a shop window. So yes, you will have probably got company websites, but this is just as important, if not more so. Some people might not even go to a website. They might come straight here. So one thing that I do see in my job all the time are really poorly fitted photographs on company pages, profile pictures that just are really blurred, cover photos that are not the required size and have half of someone's head missing off. It's so important that you make sure this is 100%. First impressions really do count. So make sure that your profile picture and banner photo fit the required size parameters. Always use your logo. Don't use somebody's face or a random picture of anything else. Stick to your logo, because that's what you want your brand to be known as. Your banner photo can be anything that you like. Usually, we do recommend that it's something that pulls from your website, so there's a bit of continuity for your brand. However, as long as it's relevant to your business, then it's completely fine. Make sure, just like we've said before, for our own profiles, you can apply it to this as well. fill out every single section, including your showcase page, and use all the same principles we've discussed: industry keywords, things like that, skill sets, things that you want to be found about for your company. You need to make sure are in there. Activity, post, post, post. There used to be an old concept of the 411. It's still going now today, and people still use it. So it's a good concept to run with if you're starting fresh. What it means is that 4 posts would be new, 1 would be a repost or a share from somebody else's, and 1 would be a promotional post, so a sales post. And it's a fact that company pages with profile pictures get 6 times more visitors than those without. Doesn't seem a lot, 6, but when you think about how many companies are actually on LinkedIn, that really is worthwhile. So just to recap, because I've been waffling on at you for probably far too long now, you should now know the basics of creating an all-star profile, the importance of building your connections, why you should manage your endorsements, why and how to ask for recommendations, how to manage your privacy settings, what your dashboard is and how to use it, the importance of an active account, and how to optimize your company page. So I think it's worthwhile just saying that there is so much more that I can teach you on LinkedIn. But like I said at the beginning, we could be here for weeks, and I could probably just bore you all to death. But if you do want to get in touch with us, Jag and I are both available on email. Just make sure that if you do email us, you don't put an E at the beginning, as we've had that quite a bit in the past. It is just an X and then panned. And also, before I hand it back to Jag, I'd just like to say, if you have learned anything from me today, I am going to ask, please go to my profile and endorse me for LinkedIn, and anything else you'd like to whilst you were there. If you'd like to connect with us, we've popped on our codes there, our QR codes, which you should be able to bring up on your phone, and you'll be able to actually connect with my profile direct there. For some reason, Jag's, yours is not there.
It's okay, no problem.
Apparently it's all about me.
So yeah,
thank you everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that, Danny. I'm sure everyone will agree there was some really good, useful information in there. So we've had a few of you posting questions in the chat section. So in answer to your question, James, yes, we'll put these slides onto our website next week, so you'll be able to see them if you want to recap on everything. So I'll just go through a few of the questions then. So Ian Story, you asked a question that you were told recently that you shouldn't share on LinkedIn as it damages the reach. And you asked if you're better off commenting. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I've also heard as well. Danny, any thoughts on that? I think it's also worth pointing out here that obviously LinkedIn have certain rules. LinkedIn are a lot like Google in that they announce certain rules, but sometimes as a user you might find that things are actually a little bit different, and you're seeing different things to what they're actually saying, and because of the nature of what it is, it changes almost on a daily basis. Yeah. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on that, Danny?
Does he mean sharing from someone else's comment, someone else's post?
I'm not entirely sure. If you want to clarify that, Ian, on the chat. But yeah,
if we take it from that point of view, that you shouldn't be sharing someone else's content, then I would say that I've not heard that myself. I would always do both anyway. It's confirmed it is. Yeah, I would always comment before I shared anyway, so I don't think you can break it. Yeah, at the end of the day, do both, as long as you are explaining why you're sharing it when you do. So don't just share, actually share and explain.
Yeah. In my experience, again, this is kind of just backs up what I was saying, because I suppose, LinkedIn rules are one way, but there's also the scenario where, in terms of my own posting, I've been posting a lot in the last month, obviously, because we've all been indoors. And I've noticed that when I've been sharing stuff, it hasn't had as much exposure. When I've been commenting, that's when the real, it's kind of had a lot of views and engagement. So yeah, I think there is definitely something varying in terms of sharing other people's posts. By all means do that, because you are supporting them. But like I say, I've noticed that they do tend to get a little less engagement, but do continue doing it, because it's one of the things that LinkedIn looks for.
Yeah, definitely. Everything that I've learned when it comes to LinkedIn is that, the big thing they say is share the love, because LinkedIn likes people to look out for each other and to work together. So I can't see why doing that would be against what, it just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. And then, okay, so on to another question. So Linda has asked, if you only have time to manage one account, would it be best to concentrate on the personal one rather than the company page? So in terms of, that's a good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah.
It would depend completely on your strategy and your goals, what your objectives were, and the size of your business as well. We have clients who come to us who are small businesses, and their goals are to make a big difference. So we would go down an influencer strategy with them, which would be focusing more on their personal brand, but then using a tie-in with the pages as well. But I think if your company page has ticked all the basic boxes and you're using your personal page to promote things as well, it's a difficult one. I'd have to know more about what your goals were.
So based on that, in my experience, because Linda and I had a chat about this about a week ago as well, and right now, I think for most businesses, it's about, in this circumstance we're in right now, obviously we can't go out and we can't network in the way that we normally would do in the real world. Mm-hmm. So the way I would look at this is it's all about the human connection side of things. So yes, you need to keep your business brand present, but really you need to keep your personal brand present. And I think also in terms of the type of content that's going out there, I think, it's the emotive stuff where you're actually talking about, sharing experiences, and not just, it's good to share technical information. But I think it's also good to just engage and just ask questions about, I saw a really great post that somebody put on the other day, just asking a question about business cards. Do you use them or do you not? Do you need them? And he had about 100 odd comments, and the engagement from that is fantastic. The actual amplification of his profile off the back of that would have been brilliant, and so many more people would have seen it. And it's something that everybody wants to talk about as well. So that kind of amplification isn't something that you would generally get as much via a company page. You'd get it more from a personal side. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got another question. So Connor has asked, he has 2 different careers in 2 different areas, and he's happy to work in either. Does he need 2 separate profiles?
That's an interesting one. Are they in different industries altogether? Because it would probably depend on that. Say, for example, if they were both within education, then no, I don't think they would. But if you had one in education and one in construction, it might be worth considering, because you need to select an industry for LinkedIn. So
yeah, that is a tough one. That is a tough one, because the flip side to that would be really then obviously people will see you having 2 separate accounts and what's going on. But then I suppose if you're defining yourself, if say education and construction, you're really penetrating the education sector, then obviously it's easier to do that if you're positioning yourself as, yes, I'm in education. And then if you're doing the same with construction, then it's worth doing that as well. I suppose really, Connor, it would depend on, which is the primary area. If you have a bang on 50-50 split, then fair enough. But if not, maybe just one, and put where where you really want to be working as the
Yeah.
primary.
I mean, you can still, obviously, you can still use the keywords on your LinkedIn for both. So, you can still do that. It's just when you set up your profile, you need to select your industry. So, and that's kind of where it all begins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from Alan Booth. Do you recommend connecting with your competitors so you see their posts or not?
Yes, 100%.
That's a good question, that.
Yeah, that is a very good question, because I think in this day and age, people need to stop being so protective of everything, because everyone knows everything anyway. So, I think definitely follow them, because they might just give you an idea.
And I think also it's a case of, I mean, are they competitors or are they collaborators? Especially again now, everyone seems to be pulling together. Obviously, you've got to compete and you've got to stay ahead, but it's best to just stay connected and see what everyone else is doing, so at least you know what's going on in the industry. I don't think it's something you should be afraid of. It's social media, so just see if they're willing to accept your connection. I think that is a great way to move
Definitely.
forward.
Gone are the days where we used to hide who had given us the testimonial, just in
Yeah.
case. And I think the same way that works with social media. It's, you can't guard everything that you're putting on there, and someone will see it. So just
Yeah.
open it up. And in fact, it's a compliment if somebody nicks your idea.
Yeah, that is another way to look at it. Yeah. I mean, I come across this a lot when we're doing websites and we're creating case studies. Clients will say, well, we don't want to put our client list on there because people will come in and pinch and they'll know who we're working with. And I understand it from that point of view, but the way I see that is, if you've got a strong enough connection with your clients, and this applies with LinkedIn as well, and you're engaging with them and you're talking to them and you're building that relationship, then, if it's strong enough, then, there's no reason for them to move anywhere else. And that comes into a whole new discussion, a whole new webinar about, the strength of your brand and your values and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, let's have a look at another question. We've got another 10 minutes. So
The one from Chris, I think, is saying that there was one earlier he asked.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sorry, I've been jumping around. So the question from Chris, Chris, you asked the question, how important is it to pay LinkedIn for enhanced access?
Well, that's a whole new webinar in itself.
Yeah.
There are lots of different options for LinkedIn for paying. It's not just one thing. There's the premium account, which I'm guessing is what you're meaning. I personally don't think you need it, because I know lots of tricks around it, around not having it. But it depends on your business, and that's one thing that we're keen, when we do sit down, we discuss a strategy for LinkedIn, as well as obviously what your focus is, what your objectives are, and whether paying would be an option. Because there's also things like in-mails and boosting posts, things like that. So it might not necessarily be the best thing, but it might. It depends.
You can. I mean, I think to concisely put that, yeah, I know you can really ace your LinkedIn without going premium. There's things that they look out, like letting you see who's been looking at your account, and gives you more opportunity to in-mail people. But like Danny says, there are a lot of ways of getting in and around that. I know a lot of people who've done very well out of LinkedIn just with a standard free account. Okay, so Bhavesh has asked a question. What type of content gets better reach and engagement on LinkedIn?
Well, that depends whether you're talking about articles or posts. As I mentioned in the thing, if you talk about articles, listicles is one of LinkedIn's favourites. They absolutely love them. But in terms of content, I think you need to make sure it's relevant to obviously what's happening and what's going on. I do know that video works really well, and rich media, so lots of visual. Video, they tend to say keep to 30 seconds for the best results. but I know people are not always confident with video, so it does depend. But yeah, I'd say keep it relevant.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, it's the emotive content that tends to get a lot of engagement. You know, on LinkedIn, obviously hashtags are a thing across all social media platforms. I think on Instagram you can just pound it with as many hashtags as you want. Generally, they say, you know, just put on 3 hashtags on a LinkedIn comment, and if you search that hashtag, you can actually see how much how many people follow that particular hashtag. So if you just put 3 on there, and like I say, right now, if it's something that's connecting, one of the stats I gave you right at the beginning, there's been 76% increase in engagement with content talking about working from home. So if you're connecting it with something to do with that and relating your message to that, it's very topical right now. So that's the kind of thing right now that's probably going to get you the most engagement. Okay, so let's have a look at if we've got any other questions. We have. Let me just have a skim through. Sorry?
Loads of questions.
Yeah. Okay, so Simon Glenn has asked a question. Should you always post to your company page and then share from your personal profile?
That's a tough one because, again, it'd depend on your business and your strategy. You know, my answer, if you were the director of his recruitment, would be completely different to someone who's a one-man band looking to, you know, increase. So
if it's a one-man band, what would your answer to that be?
I think that comes down to personal influencing. So what I would suggest is to post on your own, but tag your company in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're, again, one-man micro business up to 3 or 4 people or whatever, it's usually, there is, you know, the owner or the sales.
You can have more influence on your own than your business can.
Yeah, it's the human element that's kind of the more the personal brand as well as the business brand, but the personal brand takes over more.
Definitely. And one key extra I'd put in there is if any of you do have a team, get your team to post and tag the company, and then get your marketing manager to use that as content. It will make their job a whole lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And your employees should be ambassadors for your brand, your team. So if, you know, they're all putting stuff out there, then really you're just getting that much more brand presence out there. There's this kind of fear sometimes of employers of, you know, don't, you know, oh no, we don't want my team to be out there, to put themselves out there to, you know, get for recruiters to find them and take them off elsewhere. But I mean, that probably leads to a bit of a deeper problem, really, if you're scared of them leaving, if they're just getting a few comments on LinkedIn. There's probably other things, more important things that need to be dealt with on that front.
Yeah, I think that's the key difference to LinkedIn as a social networking platform. You know, it's not, you wouldn't ask your staff to go away and tag things on Facebook, or, you know, because it's not that kind of site. LinkedIn is a professional networking site that your staff should be using professionally, because it's their image as well as your brand image. Yeah. So asking them when they go to a client meeting or when something goes well for them to boast about it and tag the company in, that's not a bad thing.
Okay, great. So we've got time for one more question. I think we've been through them all. So Scott has asked the question. He was referring to connecting with competitors. He said, I'm guessing when connecting with your competitors, you should hide your personal connections you've built up, as in customers and clients.
I honestly don't see what can be done. If I'm a very open person when it comes to business, and I'm very confident that if any of my clients wanted to go elsewhere, they'd find a way. So I think by hiding anything, it just, if they want to find them details, they're very easy to just go on there, and hopefully you'll be sharing testimonials and recommendations from them anyway. So
yeah, and again, it comes down to the strength of the relationship and the strength of your product or service and the relationship. And that, again, that's a whole new webinar of, you know, how you're managing the relationship with your clients. Just people seeing that you're connected with them. You know, if you are in a cutthroat market where price is the only thing, then really, again, like I say, this is another webinar. It comes down to the strength of the value and are they the right customer, the kind of customer that you want, that's just going to jump ship as soon as someone's charging 10 quid less.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, I think that takes us to, I think we've answered everything, and that takes us nicely on to 12 o'clock. So
Oh,
thank
lovely.
you everyone for coming along, and thank you, Danni, for giving us this information. Hopefully you found it really useful. Just before we finish up, I'm going to be sending out an email to everyone, with the link on for the social selling index that Danni was talking about. And B, just with a link to a short survey. It'll literally take you a minute. We'd really love your feedback, just to get a bit of direction on, this kind of thing, whether you've liked it, what you haven't liked about it, because we do plan on putting more webinars out there. And yeah, just to give us a bit of steer, really. So I would really, really, really appreciate you guys filling that in for us. I'll send it straight after this. So just keep an eye out in your inboxes. And yeah, thank you for coming along, folks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great stuff. Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.